Hello there, how are you tonight? Welcome back to Silk, Secrets and Side Eyes, the sleepiest history series on the internet. If you love slow-paced palace drama, passive-aggressive poetry, and the occasional dumpling scandal, you're in the right place. So, fluff your pillow, dim the lights, and let's unravel what ancient Chinese concubines actually did all day, besides waiting for the emperor to text back. And hey, if you enjoy drifting off to historical absurdity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that little bell so you never miss a midnight mystery. Once upon a very long time ago, somewhere between the Tang dynasty's golden glow and the Ming dynasty's robe obsession, there lived a group of women whose job was to wait and look pretty and not sneeze too loudly. They were concubines, not quite wives, not quite servants, somewhere between royal accessory and emotional support scroll reader. Their official duties vague, their unofficial duties endless. Each morning began with a ritual so slow it could lull a caffeinated squirrel to sleep. Wake up, but not too early, lest you seem over-eager. Bathe in water infused with lotus petals, peach blossoms, and the tears of last night's dumpling disappointment. Sit still while 3 attendants braided your hair into a style called the Imperial cloud, which looked like a thunderstorm had politely asked permission to land on your head. Then came the robe selection. Silk or satin, gold embroidery or subtle plum blossoms. Choose wrong, and you might be mistaken for a lower-ranked concubine. Choose right, and you might get a nod from the emperor's third cousin, eunuch, assistant. Prestige breakfast was served in silence. Congee, pickled vegetables, and the occasional steamed bun shaped like a panda. Talking was discouraged. Smiling was suspicious. Laughing, grounds for exile to the embroidery wing. And then the waiting began. Concubines waited to be summoned, waited to be noticed, waited for the emperor to remember their name. Some waited so long they became experts in calligraphy, tea ceremony, and the ancient art of staring wistfully into koi ponds. But don't feel too bad. They had foot massages, poetry readings, and enough gossip to fill 1,000 bamboo scrolls. One concubine allegedly started a rumor that another had used last season's hairpin. The scandal rocked the Lotus Garden for weeks. And so, dear listener, as you drift off tonight, remember, being a concubine wasn't all drama and desire. It was mostly naps, noodles, and knowing when to flutter your fan just so. In the imperial court, hair wasn't just hair. It was status. It was symbolism. It was a 3-hour ordeal that made concubines question their life choices before breakfast. Each morning, a concubine's head became a battlefield of pins, oils, and whispered judgment. The goal, to sculpt a hairstyle so elegant it could impress the emperor from across a 200-foot courtyard without him squinting. There were rules, of course. Hair must be long, preferably longer than your patience. Hair must be shiny, like moonlight on lacquered bamboo. Hair must be styled into something poetic, like the phoenix nest or the melancholy lotus. Hair must never, ever resemble last week's style. That was social suicide. Entered the hair attendants. Tiny, silent women with fingers faster than gossip. They wielded combs like swords and hairpins like diplomatic daggers. One wrong twist, and your bun might resemble a dumpling. A low-rank dumpling. Oils were applied: camellia, jasmine, and something called emperor's essence, which smelled suspiciously like fermented melon. Then came the pins: gold, jade, ivory, and occasionally one shaped like a startled goose. Some concubines used their hair to send subtle messages. A loose strand meant I'm feeling rebellious. A crooked bun meant I didn't sleep well. A missing pin meant someone stole my style, and I will not be silent. There were hair scandals too. One concubine allegedly wore a style reserved for imperial wives. She was demoted to the embroidery wing and forced to stitch 100 phoenixes in apology. Each phoenix had a slightly judgmental expression. And so, dear listener, as you drift off tonight, imagine the gentle tug of a comb, the soft scent of jasmine oil, and the quiet dignity of a woman whose entire morning was spent trying not to sneeze, while being turned into a living sculpture. In the imperial court, chairs weren't just furniture. They were thrones of judgment, and concubines. They were expected to sit like porcelain statues, graceful, poised, and absolutely motionless. The rules were simple, and by simple, we mean absurd. Knees together, ankles aligned, back straight, but not stiff, shoulders relaxed, but not droopy, hands folded like you're holding a secret, eyes forward, but never directly at the emperor. That was considered too spicy. Concubines trained for years to master the art of elegant sitting. Some practiced with scrolls balanced on their heads. Others meditated while perched on cushions, so firm they could double as roof tiles. There were posture rankings. Yes, rankings. The lotus perch was top tier, serene, symmetrical, and slightly smug. The crane rest was for beginners, noble, but prone to wobbling. The dreaded tired toad was a posture so slouchy, it could get you reassigned to the laundry wing. One concubine famously fainted during a sitting ceremony, not from illness, but from holding the imperial swan pose for 6 hours without blinking. She was applauded for her commitment, then gently rolled away by attendants. Sitting was also a form of silent communication. A slight lean meant, "I'm bored." A subtle shift meant, "I disagree." A dramatic repositioning meant, "I just saw someone wearing my robe, and I'm about to combust." And then there were the cushions. Oh, the cushions. Silk-stuffed, jade, threaded, embroidered with dragons that looked mildly disappointed in you. Choosing the wrong cushion could imply arrogance, or worse, flatulence. So tonight, dear listener, as you nestle into your own cushion of choice, remember, in ancient China, sitting wasn't just sitting, it was a performance, a power move, a posture war. In the imperial court, tea wasn't just a drink, it was a ritual, a performance, a social chess match played with porcelain cups and passive-aggressive eyebrow raises. Concubines were expected to know their T's: longing for elegance, pura for wisdom, chrysanthemum for pretending you weren't plotting something, jasmine for flirting without saying a word. Tea time happened multiple times a day. Morning tea for clarity, afternoon tea for gossip, evening tea for pretending you weren't jealous of the concubine who got summoned last night. There were rules, naturally. Never slurp. That was barbaric. Never spill. That was tragic. Never serve tea with chipped porcelain. That was basically treason. And never, ever serve the emperor lukewarm tea. That was how dynasties fell. Tea trays were curated like art exhibits. Tiny cups, delicate saucers, and spoons carved from sandalwood. One concubine allegedly commissioned a teapot shaped like a phoenix. It whistled when poured. She was briefly promoted, then demoted when it startled the emperor's parrot. But the real drama, the tea conversations. Concubines spoke in coded metaphors. This chrysanthemum is bold today, equals, someone's robe is too flashy. I prefer my tea unsweetened, equals, I don't trust her smile. The leaves are slow to unfurl, equals, she's hiding something. There were tea feuds. One concubine claimed another used inferior leaves. A third accused someone of oversteeping. A fourth simply refused to drink anything not brewed under moonlight. The tea room became a battlefield of subtle shade and floral infusions. And yet, tea was comfort. It was control. It was the one thing concubines could master in a world where everything else was uncertain, including whether the emperor remembered your name. So tonight, dear listener, as you sip your own sleepy brew, remember, in ancient China, tea was more than a drink. It was a language, a lifeline, a leaf-shaped legacy. In the imperial court, poetry wasn't just art, it was survival. Concubines were expected to read it, recite it, and occasionally write it, but only if it didn't outshine the emperor's own haikus. That was a fast track to exile. Scrolls were everywhere, tucked into sleeves, hidden in hairpins, rolled under cushions like secret love letters to boredom. They contained verses about moonlight, plum blossoms, longing, and the occasional metaphorical jab at a rival's fashion sense. Reading poetry was encouraged. It showed refinement. Writing poetry, that was trickier. Concubines had to tread carefully. Too romantic, you were accused of seduction. Too clever, you were accused of ambition. Too vague, you were accused of being boring. Too direct, you were accused of treason. One concubine famously wrote a poem comparing her rival to a wilted lotus. It was subtle, it was elegant, it was devastating. The rival responded with a verse about a shadow that fades when the sun rises. The scroll war lasted 3 weeks and ended with a mandatory group meditation. Poetry readings were social events. Concubines gathered in the lotus garden, sipping tea and pretending not to judge each other's metaphors. Applause was gentle. Criticism was delivered via eyebrow arch. There were poetic trends, too. The moon phase metaphor era, the sad fish in a pond movement, the controversial jade teardrop minimalism phase, which involved writing poems with only 3 characters and a dramatic sigh. Scrolls were also used for secret communication. A misplaced comma could mean "meet me by the koi pond." A smudged character could imply "she stole my hairpin." A blank scroll, that was either deep existentialism or someone forgot how to write. And so, dear listener, as you drift off tonight, imagine the soft rustle of silk sleeves, the scent of ink and plum blossoms, and the quiet thrill of writing a poem that might just get you promoted or politely erased from history. In the palace, fashion wasn't just about looking good, it was about surviving the social jungle of embroidered side-eyes and robe-based rivalries. Concubines were judged by their fabric choices. Silk was classic, elegant, and impenetrable proved. Satin was bold, shiny, and slightly scandalous. Brocade was for special occasions or for showing off. Cotton, don't even joke. That was for peasants and punishment. Each morning concubines faced the ultimate dilemma. Do I wear the plum blossom silk and risk blending in, or the midnight satin and risk being called ambitious? Fashion faux pas were legendary. One concubine wore red on a non-festival day. She was accused of trying to summon attention and was reassigned to the scroll-copying wing. Another wore a robe with phoenix embroidery reserved for empresses. She was politely asked to reconsider her choices and given a robe covered in mildly disappointed cranes. There were unspoken rules. Never wear the same color as someone ranked above you. Never wear a robe longer than your status allows. Never wear patterns that resemble imperial symbols unless you enjoy embroidery exile. And never ever wear beige unless you're ready to disappear into the background, which ironically was sometimes the goal. Concubines developed signature styles. Lady May wore only pale lavender, claiming it matched her aura. Lady Lynn favored icy blue, which made her look serene and slightly terrifying. Lady Jew once wore a robe embroidered with 88 butterflies. She was briefly promoted, then demoted when one butterfly was found upside down. Fashion was also a form of silent protest. A wrinkled sash meant "I'm over this." A mismatched sleeve meant "I didn't sleep well." A robe worn backwards, that was either avant-garde or a cry for help. Imagine the soft rustle of silk, the glint of jade clasps, and the quiet drama of a hallway filled with concubines pretending not to notice each other's sleeves. In the grand halls of the Forbidden City, concubines were technically part of the emperor's inner circle. In reality, they were part of his outer orbit, his very outer orbit. Like Pluto, most concubines were never summoned. Not once, not even for a polite tea. They were selected, ranked, robed, and then shelved. Like decorative scrolls with feelings. Their days were filled with waiting, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be promoted, waiting for the emperor to walk by and say, waiting for their dumplings to cool. They waited in courtyards, gardens, and chambers so quiet you could hear a silk robe sigh. They embroidered, they read poetry, they stared at koi fish and wondered if the fish had more freedom. Some concubines became experts in embroidery. Lady Yun stitched a 12-foot tapestry of the palace rooftops. Lady Fei embroidered a scene of herself waiting, surrounded by clocks. Lady Ping stitched a single plum blossom every day for 7 years. She was eventually promoted for consistency. Others turned to hobbies, calligraphy, tea blending, inventing new ways to sit gracefully, writing secret novels disguised as laundry lists. There were rumors, of course, that the emperor had a favorite concubine, that he once summoned someone twice in 1 week, that he mistook Lady Lan for Lady Lin and caused a robe-based identity crisis. But for most, the emperor was a distant concept, like a cloud, or a very exclusive dumpling. Imagine the soft clink of embroidery needles, the rustle of robes in a quiet corridor, and the gentle sigh of a concubine who's waited so long, she's forgotten what she was waiting for. The Lotus Garden was the unofficial headquarters of palace gossip. Officially, it was a place for reflection. Unofficially, it was where alliances were forged, enemies were side-eyed, and koi fish were bribed with breadcrumbs to keep secrets. Concubines strolled in pairs, never alone, never in threes. 2 was strategic, 3 was suspicious. 4 meant someone was about to be poisoned. Lady Yun was the queen of garden whispers. She could deliver a scandal in 6 syllables and a smile. Her signature move, leaning in to smell a lotus while casually destroying someone's reputation. The koi fish were oddly attentive. Some swore they could recognize voices. Lady Fei once whispered a rumor about the empress's wig, and the koi splashed in agreement. Lady Ping tried to bribe them with sesame crackers. They ignored her. She was demoted the next week. Benches were bug-knot with devices, but with nosy gardeners. The bamboo grove had perfect acoustics. Even the wind seemed to carry juicy tidbits straight to the emperor's ears. There were coded phrases. The lotus blooms early this year equals someone's pregnant. The koi are restless equals someone's plotting. The tea is bitter equals someone's lying. The gardener looks tired equals someone's been sneaking out at night. Lady Zhu once staged a fake fainting spell near the plum tree just to eavesdrop on Lady Lan's conversation. She learned nothing, but she got a new robe out of it. The garden was also a runway. Concubines wore their finest silk robes, embroidered with passive-aggressive symbolism, peonies for power, chrysanthemums for mystery, bamboo for resilience, a single embroidered frog. That meant, I know what you did last summer. And so, dear listener, imagine the soft rustle of silk, the gentle splash of koi, and the quiet thrill of a whispered scandal floating through moonlit petals. In the imperial court, beauty wasn't optional. It was mandatory, it was monitored, it was motorized. Concubines spent hours each day pampering themselves not out of vanity, but out of survival. A dull complexion could mean demotion, a wrinkle, social exile, a pimple, a scandal. Their skincare routines were legendary. Jade rollers chilled in moonlight, pearl powder masks mixed with dew from the lotus pond, goat's milk baths infused with crushed rose petals and existential dread, herbal steam facials that smelled like ambition and mint. Lady Zan was known for her 5-layer glow technique: cleanse with rice water, exfoliate with powdered silk, tone with chrysanthemum mist, moisturize with ginseng cream, finish with a light dusting of crushed pearls and a smug smile. There were beauty feuds too. One concubine accused another of stealing her plum blossom serum. Another claimed her jade roller had been cursed. A third insisted her glow was natural, which was clearly a lie. Bathing was a full production. Attendants poured water from porcelain pitchers. Incense swirled like dramatic foreshadowing. Robes were warmed by fire and folded with the precision of a diplomatic treaty. Some concubines took it further. Lady May refused to bathe unless the water had been blessed by a temple monk. Lady Lin bathed only during full moons. Lady Zhu once bathed in tea. She smelled amazing but attracted a swarm of confused butterflies. Beauty was also a form of silent rebellion. A bold lip tint meant I'm feeling dangerous. A pale face meant I'm mysterious. A perfectly symmetrical blush meant I'm ready to be promoted. And so, dear listener, imagine the soft splash of rosewater, the gentle glide of a jade roller across a porcelain cheek, and the quiet triumph of a concubine who knows her glow is her greatest weapon. In the imperial court, words were weapons, and concubines wielded them with devastating charm. Officially, they weren't allowed to write to the emperor. Unofficially, they wrote everything: poems, letters, coded haikus, and the occasional passive-aggressive limerick. Lady Rui was a master of the poetic sneak attack. She once wrote a love poem so subtle, the emperor didn't realize he'd been seduced until 3 days later. It began with, "The moon is shy tonight." Like a robe slipping from silk shoulders, he promoted her immediately. Fans were the preferred delivery method. Concubines painted their verses onto silk fans, folded them delicately, and accidentally dropped them near the emperor's path. Some fans were scented, some were booby-trapped with glitter. One was embroidered with a tiny portrait of the emperor riding a dragon shirtless. He kept that one. Lady Wen wrote exclusively in metaphors. Her poem about plum blossoms was actually about her feelings. Her poem about rain was about jealousy. Her poem about dumplings. Unclear, but it made the emperor hungry and intrigued. The palace librarian was the unsung hero of romance. He smuggled letters, corrected grammar, and occasionally added a flourish. Lady Gia once wrote, "Your eyes are like stars." He changed it to, "Your eyes are like stars that outshine the heavens." She got a dinner invitation. He got a raise. There were risks. Lady Min's poem was misinterpreted as a political critique. Lady Qiao's fan was confiscated for being too spicy. Lady Lian wrote a poem so emotional, the emperor cried, then forgot who wrote it. Some concubines used invisible ink made from lemon juice and ambition. Others wrote in ancient dialects only the emperor understood. Lady Song wrote in emojis. She was ahead of her time. Imagine the soft flutter of silk fans, the scent of ink and longing, and the quiet thrill of a forbidden verse slipping through palace corridors. In the imperial court, a well-timed exit was more powerful than 1,000 words. Concubines didn't just walk away, they vanished with grace, with purpose, and occasionally with backup dancers. Lady Xian was the undisputed queen of dramatic exits. She once left a banquet by dropping her chopsticks, whispering, "I've said enough," turning slowly while her silk robe caught the candlelight, and disappearing behind a curtain of incense. The crowd applauded. The emperor wrote her a poem. The empress rolled her eyes. There were categories of exits. The silent storm. No words, just a swirl of silk and a meaningful glance. The emotional collapse includes fainting, clutching pearls, and being carried out by confused eunuchs. The philosophical departure. If beauty is fleeting, then so must I be. The petty exit. Enjoy your dumplings. I hope they're as bland as your personality. Lady Ju once exited a garden party by releasing a dove and walking away as it flew overhead. Lady Lin left a poetry reading by quoting herself. Lady Fai exited a hot spring wrapped in steam and mystery. No one saw her leave. She was just gone. Props were essential. Fans for dramatic snapping. Sleeves for exaggerated turns. Hairpins for symbolic removal. Perfume sachets for lingering presence. Some concubines rehearsed their exits. Lady May practiced in front of a mirror. Lady Qiao hired a flute player to follow her around. Lady Ren once exited a room backwards. No one knew why. It was iconic. Timing was everything. Leave too early. You're rude. Leave too late. You're desperate. Leave right after a scandal. You're unforgettable. Imagine the soft rustle of silk, the flick of a fan, and the quiet power of a woman who knows exactly when to leave and how to make you wish she'd stayed. In the imperial court, sleeves weren't just fashion. They were storage. They were strategy. They were survival. Concubines hid everything in their sleeves: love letters, bribes, tiny scrolls of gossip, emergency snacks. One concubine allegedly smuggled a squirrel. It escaped during a poetry recital. Chaos ensued. Lady Lian ran a secret perfume empire from her quarters. She blended rare oils, sold them to other concubines, and once scented the emperor's robe so powerfully he declared her the essence of heaven. She trademarked the phrase. She was brilliant. Lady Zan had a side hustle decoding dream. She claimed she could interpret omens from the way your robe wrinkled. She was mostly wrong, but she was very convincing. Lady Ping sold embroidered handkerchiefs with hidden messages stitched in Morse code. Lady Fai ran a matchmaking service. Lady Zhu taught dramatic exit workshops. There were spies, too. Concubines planted informants among attendants. Some bribed the palace cat. Lady May trained her pet parrot to repeat overheard gossip. It once squawked, "The Empress wears a wig." Lady May was promoted. The parrot was relocated. Sleeves were also used for secret signals. Tug left sleeve equals meet me by the koi pond. Tug right sleeve equals abort mission. Tug both sleeves equals I forgot my lines. Flap sleeves dramatically equals I demand attention. Lady Qiao once staged a fake fainting spell just to slip a message into the Emperor's sleeve. It read, "Your robe is lovely. Your decisions are questionable." He laughed. She got a new robe. Imagine the soft swish of silk sleeves, the scent of forbidden perfume, and the quiet thrill of a concubine who's running 3 businesses, 2 schemes, and still looks flawless by moonlight. By day, the palace was a battlefield. By night, it was a slumber party with high stakes. Concubines gathered in private chambers, robes loosened, hairpins removed, and guards bribed with mutna kicks. They called it the Pillow Pact. It was not officially recognized, but it was very real. Lady Yun hosted the most coveted sleepovers. Her room was scented with jasmine, stocked with snacks, and guarded by a parrot named Trust Issues. She served dumplings shaped like lotus flowers and tea that allegedly revealed your true intentions. Topics of discussion included who got a new robe, who cried during calligraphy class, who was secretly dating the palace flute player, who might be pregnant, who was definitely lying about being pregnant. Lady Fei brought gossip. Lady Lin brought foot rubs. Lady Ju brought a scroll titled How to Flirt Without Getting Exiled. It was mostly diagrams. There were rules: no snitching, no judging, no talking about Lady Xion's dramatic exits, no stealing dumplings. Lady Ping broke that rule once. She was banned for a week. Pillow talk was strategic. Concubines shared intel, vented frustrations, and occasionally plotted coordinated robe color schemes to confuse the emperor. One night, 5 concubines wore identical plum silk. He thought he was hallucinating. He gave everyone a raise. Some sleepovers turned emotional. Lady Gia confessed she missed her village. Lady May revealed she'd once been in love with a poet. Lady Kyo admitted she didn't understand poetry but liked the snacks. There were rituals: cucumber slices for tired eyes, rosewater spritzes for dramatic effect, a group chant, "May our glow outshine our rivals," a final toast with chrysanthemum tea. Imagine the soft rustle of silk blankets, the scent of jasmine in secrets, and the quiet strength of women who knew that sisterhood was their sharpest weapon. In the palace, food was more than sustenance. It was seduction. It was strategy. It was sabotage. Concubines competed to cook for the emperor. A well-steamed dumpling could earn a promotion. An overcooked noodle, exile, or worse, mockery. Lady Zan was the reigning dumpling queen. Her signature dish, lotus blossom surprise, a delicate dumpling filled with minced duck, plum sauce, and ambition. Lady Fay challenged her to a cook-off, the prize, a dinner invitation. The stakes, everything. The kitchen was neutral ground, except it wasn't. Lady Lin bribed the spice boy. Lady Ping swapped the sesame oil for fish sauce. Lady May whispered, "May your dough collapse." The emperor was the judge. He arrived wearing his tasting robe. It had embroidered chopsticks and a pocket for soy sauce. Round 1. Presentation. Lady Jen's dumplings were shaped like phoenixes. Lady Fay's looked like angry clouds. Lady Ping submitted 1 dumpling and a poem. She was disqualified. Round 2. Flavor. Lady Jen's dumplings were subtle, elegant, and slightly smug. Lady Fay's were bold, spicy, and emotionally unstable. The emperor cried. He asked for seconds. Round 3. Drama. Lady Fay accidentally dropped a dumpling into Lady Jen's sleeve. Lady Zen retaliated. By her soy sauce. Lady Lin fainted from the fumes. Lady Kyo filmed everything on a scroll. In the end, the emperor declared a tie. Both concubines were invited to dinner. Lady Zan brought dessert. Lady Fay brought a fire extinguisher. Imagine the hiss of the wok, the scent of plum and pepper, and the quiet thrill of a dumpling that could change your destiny. In the imperial court, fashion was tightly regulated. Colors were ranked, patterns were policed, accessories were audited. But concubines, they rebelled with embroidery. Lady Zhu was the pioneer of subversive stitching. She embroidered a dragon with a smirk, a phoenix wearing sunglasses, a lotus giving side-eye. The empress was not amused. The emperor was very amused. Dress codes dictated. Only senior concubines could wear crimson. Only favorites could wear gold. Only the empress could wear peacock feathers. Lady Fire wore one anyway. She claimed it was accidental. It was not. Lady Lin invented mood robes. Each robe reflected her emotional state. Pale blue equals bored. Plum equals plotting. Jade green equals pretending to be innocent. Black with silver embroidery equals don't talk to me unless you brought dumplings. Lady Ping stitched poetry into her hems. Lady Ju wore sleeves so long they required their own attendants. Lady Gia once wore a robe made entirely of silk fans. She rustled with every step. It was dramatic. It was loud. It was iconic. There were fashion feuds. Lady May accused Lady Kyo of copying her chrysanthemum motif. Lady Kyo responded by wearing a robe covered in dead chrysanthemums. Lady May fainted twice. Some concubines used fashion to send secret messages. A robe with embroidered koi equals, "Meet me by the pond." A sash tied left equals, "I know your secret." A sash tied right equals, "I am your secret." A robe with no embroidery equals, "I'm either very powerful or very tired." The emperor once declared a robe-free day. It lasted 6 minutes. Lady Zan arrived in a sheer cloud of scandal. Lady Fire arrived in a robe made of dumpling wrappers. Lady Lin arrived in a blanket and said, "I misunderstood the assignment." Imagine the soft rustle of rebellious silk, the shimmer of forbidden thread, and the quiet triumph of a concubine who knew that fashion wasn't just flair, it was power. In the imperial court, fans weren't just for cooling off. They were for communication, for coordination, for chaos. Concubines used fans to speak without speaking. Lady Lin could deliver a full insult with 3 flicks and a raised eyebrow. Lady Fay once flirted with the emperor using only fan gestures and a strategically timed sneeze. He was enchanted. The empress was not. There were fan codes. Slow flutter equals, "I'm bored." Fast flutter equals, "I'm panicking." Closed fan tapped twice equals, Meet me by the koi pond. Open fan held sideways equals she's lying. Fan dropped dramatically equals I demand attention. Ladies U founded the unofficial fan club. Membership required. A fan with at least one embroidered animal. A signature flutter style. A willingness to gossip in metaphor. Meetings were held in the Lotus Garden. Topics included who wore the wrong robe, who cried during tea ceremony, who was secretly writing fan fiction about the emperor. Spoiler, it was Lady Ping. Fans were customized. Silk fans with plum blossom patterns. Bamboo fans scented with jasmine. Feathered fans that doubled as weapons. Lady Ju once used hers to swat a dumpling thief. Lady Jia used hers to hide snacks. Lady Mei used hers to hide feelings. There were fan feuds. Lady Qiao accused Lady Lin of copying her flutter. Lady Lin responded by inventing the reverse flutter. Lady Qiao fainted. Lady Lin was promoted. Fans were also used for sabotage. Lady Fei sprinkled glitter into Lady Jen's fan. Lady Zan sparkled for 3 days. The Emperor called her celestial. Lady Fei was furious. Imagine the soft whisper of silk fans, the coded flicks of palace intrigue, and the quiet power of a concubine who could start a scandal with a breeze. The Emperor's birthday was a national event. Fireworks, feasts, flattery, and a gift competition. So intense it made the dumpling wars look like a polite brunch. Concubines prepared for weeks. Lady Fei wrote a poem. Lady Lin choreographed a fan dance. Lady Jia commissioned a portrait of the Emperor riding a tiger. The tiger looked confused. So did the Emperor. Lady Ping tried something bold. A cake, shaped like a dragon, made of rice flour, honey, and ambition. The cake was lumpy, slightly smoking, decorated with raisins that looked like eyes. Lady Ping called it the Fiery Majesty. Lady Lin called it the Lumpy Lizard. The Emperor smiled politely, then sneezed. Turns out, he was mildly allergic to honey. Lady Ping was devastated. Lady Fei was delighted. Meanwhile, Lady Zhu gifted a scroll titled 100 Reasons You're Divine. Reason number 47. You once wore purple and made it look humble. Reason number 88. Your sneeze sounds like wisdom. The Emperor cried. Lady Zhu was promoted. Lady Mei gave him a robe embroidered with constellations. Lady Qiao gave him a mirror that whispered compliments. Lady Zan gave him a bonsai tree shaped like a phoenix. Lady Fei gave him a poem titled Ode to Your Eyebrows. It was intense. The Emperor's reaction: smiled at the robe, winked at the mirror, watered the bonsai, avoided eye contact with Lady Fei. Lady Ping, still recovering from the cake incident, tried to redeem herself with a haiku. Dragon of the East raisins blink with royal pride, please don't sneeze again. The Emperor laughed. Lady Ping was forgiven. The cake was quietly buried in the garden. Imagine the flicker of birthday candles, the rustle of silk robes, and the quiet panic of a concubine trying to sculpt a dragon out of desert. In the palace, robes were everything. They signaled rank, mood, and whether you were about to start drama. Each concubine had a signature style. Lady Fei wore crimson with phoenix embroidery. Lady Jia preferred lavender with clouds. Lady Lin, pale gold with subtle sass. Then came laundry day. The attendants were overwhelmed. Silk everywhere. Labels missing. One robe the Empress's robe accidentally placed in Lady Lin's pile. Lady Lin, half asleep and fully unaware, slipped it on. It was majestic. It shimmered. It had dragon embroidery and pearls sewn into the sleeves. Lady Lin thought, wow, laundry's really stepping up. She strutted into breakfast. The room fell silent. Lady Fei dropped her dumpling. Lady Ping gasped so hard she inhaled a sesame seed. Lady Jia whispered, she's either bold or doomed. The Emperor blinked twice, then said, new robe. Lady Lin replied, laundry surprise. The Empress arrived. She did not blink. Lady Lin tried to explain. It was in my pile. I thought it was a gift. I was half asleep and emotionally vulnerable. The Empress stared, then said, you wore my robe. Lady Lin nodded. Lady Fei whispered, she's going to be exiled. Lady Ping whispered, she's going to be promoted. The Emperor laughed. He said, it suits you. The Empress said, it's missing a pearl. Lady Lin checked her sleeve. The pearl was gone. Lady Jia found it in her congee. Crisis averted. Sort of. Lady Lin was given a new robe, gold, with embroidered dumplings. A subtle nod to the incident. Lady Fei called it the breakfast robe. Lady Lin called it survival couture. Imagine the rustle of forbidden silk, the tension of mistaken fashion, and the quiet triumph of a concubine who turned a laundry accident into a legacy. Lady Ping was exploring the West Wing. She claimed she was getting steps in. She was actually snooping. Behind a dusty screen she found it. A teapot, porcelain, cracked, decorated with koi fish and ominous clouds. It hummed. Lady Ping said, "That's normal." She brought it to breakfast, poured tea for everyone. Lady Fire took a sip and immediately said, "I bribed the embroidery maid to add extra phoenixes to my robe." Everyone stared. Lady Jia sipped. "I once kissed the Emperor's portrait." Lady Lin sipped. "I don't know how to read poetry. I just nod dramatically." Lady Ping blinked. The teapot was cursed, or enchanted, or just very persuasive. Lady Zan refused to sip. She claimed she was cleansing. Lady May sipped and confessed. She'd been hiding snacks in the bonsai tree. The Emperor sipped and said, "I sometimes pretend to be asleep during council meetings." The Empress sipped, paused, then said, "I know everything. I just enjoy watching you squirm." Lady Ping panicked. She tried to hide the teapot. It spilled. The koi fish glowed. Lady Ping screamed. Lady Fei applauded. The teapot was taken to the archives, locked in a box, labeled "Do Not Brew." Lady Ping was mildly traumatized. Lady Lin was mildly impressed. Lady Jia tried to write a poem about it. It rhymed truth with uncouth. Imagine the steam of secrets, the clink of porcelain, and the quiet chaos of a breakfast where honesty was accidentally served. The moon lotus hairpin was legendary, gold jade, rumored to grant eternal elegance. It belonged to the Empress. It was kept in a locked box, inside a locked drawer, inside a locked room. Lady Fei said, "Challenge accepted." She recruited Lady Lin. Lady Lin said, "Why me?" Lady Fei said, "You're sneaky and you owe me one." Lady Lin said, "Fine, but I'm wearing flats." The plan: sneak past the night guards, distract the koi pond attendant, use Lady Jia's stolen key, retrieve the hairpin, escape dramatically. Lady Ping overheard. She offered snacks. Lady Fei declined. Lady Ping followed anyway. At midnight, they moved. Lady Lin tiptoed. Lady Fei glided. Lady Ping tripped over a lantern. They reached the Empress's chamber. Lady Fei picked the lock. Lady Lin whispered affirmations. Lady Ping ate a dumpling. Inside, the hairpin glowed. Lady Fei gasped. Lady Lin said, "It's prettier than I expected." Lady Ping said, "Can I touch it?" Suddenly footsteps. Lady Zhen, the night patrol queen. She was wearing slippers and suspicion. Lady Fei grabbed the hairpin. Lady Lin grabbed Lady Ping. They bolted through the garden, past the koi pond, into the laundry chute. They landed in a pile of robes. Lady Ping said, "Dacia vu." Lady Fire said, "We're legends." Lady Lin said, "We're lucky." The next morning, the Empress wore a different hairpin. She said nothing. Lady Fei wore the moon lotus in her bun. Everyone noticed. No one dared ask. Lady Zan winked. Lady Ping offered her a dumpling. Lady Zan accepted. If tonight's tale made you dream of moonlit mischief or glamorous getaways, give it a like, subscribe for more bedtime brilliance, and share it with someone who'd make a great getaway partner. Until next time, stay cozy, stay curious, and good night.